All right, we are go for launch.
All right. Good evening. Welcome to the Henrietta Town Board meeting for April 14th, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford,
Here.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin this evening with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the preceding meetings of March 24th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Tonight we have three public hearings. First up is to consider the petition for the establishment of extension number 223 to the Henrietta Sewer District number 1. Proposed extension would add the Forest View subdivision and authorize associated charges being assessed to benefiting property. So one of the things that we've discussed in the past is that some number of years ago, the neighborhood to the west paid to have sewer infrastructure put in, including a pump station. They are still paying off the bond on that with essentially sewer district fees. It did not seem fair and equitable to me to have this subdivision essentially gain the benefit of that pump station and not have to pay off, not contribute towards the payoff of the debt. So what we did is we went through and we calculated the portion of the bond that was used to pay for the pump station and the force main. And then, so we separated that out, and that is being divided across all of the sewer districts that benefit from that pump station. That results in minimal charges here, but again, any charges that come here, it reduces the charges to the people who paid for it. Those charges would end in, I think it's 2028, which is the last, that's the year of maturity for the bond. So obviously anyone hooked up to sewer would pay sewer rent, but you know, that continues to go on. But in addition, again, there would be this, I think on the average household, it was $75 to $100 annual charge for the bond maintenance costs for that hardware that, again, this development takes advantage of. So originally this was on the agenda 1 or 2 meetings ago. We needed to get the determination of those costs, so that's why this was delayed till today. Any comments, questions?
I think it's fair that they pay their share.
And again, it will only be for the 8 remaining years of the bond, so it's not going to be a huge burden, but it will help the residents who paid to put the thing in the first place.
Exactly.
Some of them are paying some significant prices because the cost of the sewer mains was 2/3 of the cost. The pump station and the force main was about 1/3 the cost.
I too agree that it's very fair and glad we did this calculation to spread out that debt.
Any other comments, feedback, anything online? Hearing none, unless there's objection, I am going to call the public hearing to consider the petition for the establishment of extension number 223 to the Henrietta Sewer District Number 1, proposed extension would add the Forest View subdivision and authorize associated charges being assessed to benefiting properties. So closed. Next up, we have a public hearing to consider designating 6400 West Henrietta Road as a historic site. This property was actually originally suggested to be added to the roll back when Helen Elam was, I think it was on her recommendation that this be added. And then unfortunately, it kind of got lost. And the property owners, as I understand it, found it, came back. And so we are now considering it. I think it's a great addition. I don't know if there's anybody who's from that property who wishes to speak or wishes to speak on it.
I do have the property owner on, but she's just listening today.
Okay.
And I know that Gary had planned on saying something, but I do not see Gary. I know Tina is on. Oh, hold on. I found out how she came in. Let me get her promoted in case she'd like to say something.
Great.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Becky. As you can see, this is a lovely representational farmhouse from the mid 1800s. And we are very, very happy that Yvonne Allen is willing to ask to have this home be recognized as a historic property for the community.
And this is just north of Martin Road, is that correct?
That is correct.
So, you know, obviously it has the support of the Historic Site Committee and the town historian. Anybody else wish to speak or comment? I think
Well, maybe
it's a great addition. Go
your
ahead.
property will be historic at some point. This,
Not for 50 years. Well, 41 years at least.
Well, it looks like Mrs. Smith was our supervisor at one time.
Oh,
So maybe, give it 100 years, you'll be okay.
that's right.
A lot of good history there that I read. Thanks for providing that.
Any other comments? Hearing none, then unless there's objection, I will be closing the public hearing to consider designating 6400 West Henry Road a historic site. Public hearing closed. Finally, we have a public hearing to consider the draft supplemental generic environmental impact statement. It's for incentive zoning and updated solar regulations. So again, it's 2 years ago now, we had basically done a update to our comprehensive, I apologize for being a little groggy.
Land use plan.
Thank you. I had my second COVID shot yesterday and it has left me a little groggy today. So anyway, we updated our comprehensive land use plan, adopted it, I believe, in February of 2019. At the time, we were, one of the main focuses of that, there were a lot of things on it, but one of the main focuses was getting the multifamily properties out of industrial zones and some of the commercial zones. But for those who understand zoning, you can't say we can't allow any, of a particular building type. You have to be able to provide a location where it can go. And so we had created these overlay districts. At the time, there was a building moratorium on multifamily, and we extended it a couple times. So at that point, we were looking at the solar, updating our solar regulations, and there were a bunch of things changing at the state. So it was kind of in flux. And then we were also looking at incentive zoning But we didn't want to rush it through because if you put in incentive zoning without going through the rigor, you can potentially create some loopholes for people to abuse. So we decided at that time, even though it was talked about in the comprehensive land use plan update and its associated environmental impact statement, we essentially decided to hold off on the final determination on those two items with the idea that we would do a supplemental generic environmental impact study down the road. It was a little bit delayed because of COVID, but we're now trying to wrap it up. Again, we had the public discussions. We had a citizen board talking about this stuff when we had done the comprehensive land use plan update. But now we have to finish the supplemental GEIS process. And so tonight, that step is to hold a public hearing on the draft supplemental GEIS where we'll be getting input and we'll go from there. So with us tonight, we have Walt Kalina from EDR, who is our consultant on this project. Walt led the team on the original comprehensive land use plan update. And so he's, even though he's semi-retired, he's continued to work with us on the supplemental impact statement. And Walt, I understand you have a presentation that you can share with the public.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, Steve. Please let me know if you have any problems hearing me.
So far, so good.
Okay. Okay, as Steve had mentioned, tonight's a seeker public hearing on the draft supplemental GEIS. And there's really two portions to the public hearing and the action. One includes modifications to the town's existing solar energy system regulations, and the second has to do with establishment of incentive zoning. For folks that might not be familiar with the term seeker, it's the State Environmental Quality Review Act. That is New York State legislation that requires before a municipality or an agency takes any actions that you undergo a review of the potential for environmental impacts on the environment or a community before those actions are implemented. The town board is the lead agency for the seeker review as the legislative body, just as it was in 2019. As Steve had mentioned the original GEIS, the generic environmental impact statement, was done in 2019 for the comprehensive plan update and the zoning modifications at that time. The town board has had EDR prepare a draft supplement to that 2019 GEIS. 2 weeks ago, the town board had accepted that draft as ready for public review. And the document itself has been put on the town's website. I'll show you that in a minute. And the fifth check mark on our list here is tonight's public hearing and comment period. And the comment period will run 30 days until April 25th at 5 p.m. Then after the comment period closes, the town board will then prepare a final supplemental GEIS and will respond to any comments that are received on the draft. And the town board will then prepare a seeker finding statement, which will conclude the seeker process. So as I mentioned, the description of the action really involves two separate sub-actions. This really continues the implementation of the comprehensive land use plan, as Steve had mentioned. And really, the overall focus of that comprehensive land use plan has been in response to the community's desire for protection and conservation of open space, agriculture, natural and cultural resources like the historic resource we just seen, and enhancement of community character. So with those goals in mind, we had taken a look at modifying the town's current solar energy regulations that are now contained within section 295, 52.5 of the zoning ordinance, and establishing incentive zoning, which is allowed under New York State. And that includes modification of section 295, 52.1 of the town's zoning ordinance, which includes the town's current open space incentive option. So in a way, the town has already some sense of incentive zoning on the books. Really briefly, modifying the solar energy regulations. Technology continues to change, and the state has updated its energy goals to include solar energy as part of renewable alternative energy sources. And so the town considered changing some aspects of the solar energy system regulations to bring them into better alignment with those changes in technology, with the energy goals for alternative sources, and with the land use goals and policies that were established under the updated comprehensive land use plan. Basically, those solar energy regulations have categorized solar energy systems by type, and they're usually either roof mounted or ground mounted systems. And the regulations that are contained in the draft SGEIS also categorize solar energy systems by their size and their location. Again, these modifications were made with a focus on protecting agriculture, prime farmland, and rural character, while still enabling solar energy systems to be constructed within the town. A lot of the regulations that have been modified are based upon a New York Solar Guidebook for Local Governments that was prepared by NYSERDA in 2019. As Steve had mentioned, the state was reviewing all of their solar energy regulations. They produced this guidebook to help municipalities gain some perspective on the potential benefits and some of the drawbacks of especially large scale solar systems. And as you can see here in quotes, that guidebook actually points out that it's fitting for municipalities to take a look at their existing zoning and land use regulations, especially with regard to large scale systems, because those systems do tend to raise some concerns over land use, development, aesthetics, decommissioning once those large systems have reached the end of their life, and then disposal concerns. So looking at this guidebook, the town went ahead and we have modified the existing solar energy regulations. And I won't go into details tonight. The draft text of the law for those solar regulations are in Appendix A of the draft SGEIS. With regard to this,
Can I interject a second?
yes.
So one of the big changes, in addition to updating all the existing stuff we had, one of the big changes was we added large scale solar arrays. And we decided not to define them by megawatt, figuring that as the yields of solar panels go up, since this really has to do with land use, we decided to define it by acreage. And one of the things that during that comprehensive land use plan, one of the things we enacted as part of that was a farmland protection plan. And, small farms like we have here in Henrietta, we really don't have any large scale farming operations. Small farms have a challenge staying afloat because they just don't have the capital to modernize. They don't get the production of scale. There's a lot of issues. And so we were looking at, are there ways to get alternative farm incomes to keep those farms afloat? And so one of those we looked at was this large scale solar array. And it's up to 25 acres. So with today's current technology, that's about 5 megawatts. But one of the things we said is it couldn't be more than 25% of a working farm. And one of the other things that we then require to do is while that solar array is in operation, they have to put a agricultural easement on the rest of the farm. So they can't come in, get a solar array, and then essentially sell the farm to something else or try to develop it as houses. It has to stay agricultural the entire time that that solar array is on there. And we did that to, again, try to avoid a loophole that somebody might try to exploit. So, you know, we had our first takers. Now you might say, well, how did you do it when you don't have the new regulations in place? What we did is we did it through, they essentially agreed for us to put all kinds of constraints on their special use permit. So we essentially, what is located in this new section of code, we just went through, I don't remember how many it was, 20 something conditions on their special use permit to address all of the stuff we had in the new code. And one of the things that did for us that was great is it helped us with the process because there were some things that we thought would work and became, you know, were maybe problematic because of real property tax law or other issues. So it was a really good test so that we could get the stuff correct before we implemented it. So, you know, so that's exciting. They should be, I think they're close to pulling a building permit. The last thing that they're waiting on is one of the things that the code requires is a decommissioning bond so that should the company go bankrupt, we can pay to have the solar panels removed. Because from a environmental impact situation, a working solar array is not an issue. It's when the solar array stops working and starts to break down if any of those chemicals start to leach into the soil. So if it ever stops operational, we would be able to use that decommissioning bond to remove all of the solar panels so that there's no environmental impact. So like I said, it was a great test run, and now we're going to fully codify it. So thanks, Walt.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for adding that. Yeah, just along those lines too. Again, I just want to remind people that they can go to Appendix A in the draft GEIS and look at the language of the proposed law. And just like Steve said, some of the criteria that is in there are things like the avoidance of prime farmland soils. So the text of those regulations really, it's designed and worded such that impacts to the environment and especially to agriculture, the rural character of the southern part of the town are protected. So that was kind of the basis for which we wrote up both the solar regulations and the incentive zoning regulations, with avoiding the impacts as part of the process of writing up those laws. Establishing incentive zoning, like I said, is the second part of the action. Incentive zoning has been around for quite some time. It's allowed under municipal law in New York State. And basically what it does, it allows a municipality to offer certain incentives to a developer or a property owner for developing a project in return for receiving some type of a community benefit or an amenity. And some of those incentives can be things like the use of smaller lots that would be smaller than what the zoning ordinance might otherwise allow. And in exchange for that, a developer might offer a community some type of a benefit like permanent conservation easement on open space, or affordable housing, or some other type of community benefit like parkland. And some of those are listed here under the legislation. And all those types of benefits and incentives are outlined again in the GEIS. Some of the requirements for incentive zoning, it needs to be in accord with a locally adopted comprehensive plan. And specifically, again, we had updated the comprehensive plan in 2018. It was adopted in 2019. And the incentive zoning really is aimed at implementing a lot of the same type of goals that were identified in that comprehensive plan. Again, it's It's protecting the rural character of the area, protecting agriculture, being consistent with the farmland protection plan, those types of things. Each zoning district where the incentives are offered must be designated, and those are identified in the draft language of the plan. And then before incentive zoning can be adopted by a community, it is required that you go through this seeker process and specifically through a generic environmental impact statement. The reason this is a supplement and not it is a supplement to a generic environmental impact statement is because the impact statement was done, 2 years ago, and conditions have not changed significantly since then. And in the original 2019 generic EIS, we had looked at the entire community, looked at the types of resources, environmental quality, public facilities, transportation, water supply, waste disposal, fire protection. So all of these things were addressed in that 2019 GEIS.
So to, again, interject a little bit to give you some ideas of some of the things we're talking about. One of the things you always see when someone builds a new development, they say, well, why are they doing that instead of using this long dormant building? Usually those long dormant buildings have some issues with them that represent additional cost to the developers. And so the developer, given a choice, is almost always going to go to the new build because it's a lot less complicated. So the idea of incentive zoning is to give that developer some benefit so that it encourages them to maybe change that equation to use that long dormant building and redevelop it. So, or some other examples are, like one of the things that's missing in a lot of areas is sidewalks. But again, that's not cheap to bring sidewalks in. And so one of the things that you could potentially do is if a neighborhood is being built, maybe you can give them a few extra units beyond what code would require so that they can generate some additional income. And in exchange, they would run sidewalks, connecting to, a lot of times we have these gaps in our sidewalk network. Another example is infrastructure. So water or sewer, there are areas that in our town we're missing water or sewer. And so again, they might have two different routes that they could bring that infrastructure to their development. And we might want them to take the longer route because it will bring that water or sewer to a bunch of houses that currently don't have it. This encourages them to spend that extra money to go that route so that we get the community benefit of, some houses that have long wanted sewer but can't get it. This is a way for them to essentially have that connection capability. So those are the ideas, some examples of what's in there in terms of what we're looking at those are examples of community benefits, in addition to the ones Walt already mentioned with conservation of open space, parklands, trails, things like that.
Yeah, and we'll show a slide with some more of that information in a few minutes. For anyone interested in looking at the draft supplemental GEIS, it is on the town's website at henrietta.org, and it's on the first page. There is a link to it, and it'll send you right there to the GEIS for your review. You'll notice that GEIS summarizes a lot of the 2019 GEIS that I had mentioned. The original 2019 draft and final GEIS is available at eCode, and that website link is on the bottom of the slide. The town has this PowerPoint, and they will make it available so that folks can have these website links to look at these documents. The draft supplemental GEIS follows the same format as the original 2019 version. There's an executive summary and then 3 chapters that discuss the purpose, the need, all the things that are required under seeker that need to be addressed, including the environmental setting, potential impacts and mitigation, and other things like alternatives considered. And perhaps, again, one of the most important parts of the draft supplemental GEIS are the appendices that have the draft text of the proposed local laws. And I do want to emphasize that those are in draft form yet, and they still might undergo some refinement, especially based upon any comments that we receive during this process. Potential impacts and mitigation. Adopting these zoning modifications is an administrative action by the town board. And so that won't directly result in adverse impacts to the environment or the community. And no significant adverse impacts are anticipated. Again, the way that the codes were written, they were written such that project approval is contingent on the fact that site-specific projects will not create adverse environmental impacts on the community. All future site-specific projects, whether by the private sector or the public sector, will go through seeker. And in addition, they have to go through various towns' permitting and approval criteria that are established in the original GEIS and the new criteria that's contained within the local laws, the proposed local laws. Some of the potential impacts are mitigated by incentivizing some of the things like conservation easements. We've identified 5 different types of conservation easements within the community. That includes natural conservation easements that are basically open space and left more or less in a natural state, which is a benefit to wildlife. Then there is a maintained conservation easement, a parkland conservation easement, an agricultural conservation easement that sets aside lands for agricultural purposes, and a historic conservation easement. The incentive zoning, as Steve had mentioned, is really based upon 4 different types of incentives. One is the open space incentive, which really follows the rural residential zoning district in the town. And the second one is a commercial revitalization incentive zone that follows basically the commercial B1 and B2 zoning districts in the town. The neighborhood upgrade incentives are based upon zoning districts town-wide, so they're available anywhere within the town. And the same for historic properties; those are based upon town-wide zoning districts. Here's just an example of some of the advantages with incentive zoning. This is a comparison between 2 different types of subdivision design. One being the conventional subdivision design that is probably most common. I know it's most common in Henrietta, and some of that might include, larger lot subdivisions, especially in some of the, more rural areas of the town. And then on the bottom of the slide, you can see a conservation subdivision design. And one of the things that we're incentivizing within the rural residential zoning district, that open space district, is the use of conservation subdivision design. And the slide shows the comparison between a conventional subdivision and the conservation subdivision. The illustrations on the left side of the slide, the upper part is the conventional. As I said, it's 97 acres. You can see in yellow where the little outline of the houses are set upon large lots. Those are approximately 4-acre lots out of a 97-acre parcel. So you've got a density of about 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, and the average lot size is about 4 acres. This is typically how a lot of subdivisions are developed, and not only in Henrietta, but throughout New York State and really countrywide. In the past, these haven't been problematic, but as development continues in communities, it begins to erode away your farmland, your agriculture, your open space. So the alternative to that is a conservation subdivision design, and that's shown at the bottom. And what you can see are much smaller lots. Instead of the 4 acres per lot, you get 3/4 of an acre lots. You still have 19 lots on the 97-acre parcel, So it still is the same density at 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, but now the average lot size has decreased from 4 acres to 3 acres. What has happened was, the benefit now is that unlike the top where there's no common open space, those are all privately held parcels. Under the conservation subdivision design, you can have a lot of conservation easements and common open space. And what that bottom illustration is showing are areas that are set aside with some of those conservation easements that I had mentioned earlier. So you can see areas that, if you can see where my cursor is, these are steep slope areas that instead of being fully developed, they're left in their natural state. Some of these existing woodlands and some wetlands could be left, again, under a conservation easement as open space, possibly for public use. Some of these stream corridors can be left for the benefit of wildlife. 10-acre woodland down here, instead of being clear cut and developed, are left for aesthetic reasons. Some, horse pasture areas. One of the things that I want to point out is you've got the roadway here, and you've got, in the upper part, views into a typical subdivision. You've got the same roadway down here in the conservation subdivision, but instead of a view directly into subdivided housing lots, you can see the woodland, the horse pastures, the natural areas. So this helps contribute to maintaining the rural character of a community. This is the type of thing that the town is really trying to encourage in the rural residential zoning district in the southern part of the town, while you'll still have some of those open space and farmland resources left. Now, in exchange for conservation subdivision design, a developer would still be able to get the development. He might be able to get a few more lots on a parcel of land that would be to his advantage. But again, the benefit to the community would be he would turn over either through a land trust or possibly a homeowners association, that open space area that could be used for public trails or other types of open space uses. This is taken from the town's current rural development design guidelines. And for many of you folks that might not know, that the town has guidelines in the rural areas of the town. And this is just an illustration, again, kind of showing the same thing under a conservation subdivision, where you have development here on smaller lots that might not otherwise be allowed under conventional zoning. And then you have agriculture preserved here, hedgerows, again, some of these natural areas set aside near the roadway to maintain that agricultural character of the area. So these, again, are the types of things that really is it's one of the primary focuses of the incentive zoning, as we're trying to protect farmland, trying to protect the rural character of the southern part of the town, and trying to protect open space for next generations. As Steve had mentioned, there's other aspects to the incentive zoning, the commercial revitalization that I had mentioned in the commercial areas. That is really geared towards promoting reuse and redevelopment of vacant and underutilized structures. That's the same type of thing that we did with the comprehensive plan and the overlay districts. Again, why develop new green fields at the expense of losing your open space or agriculture when you have already developed areas with services and infrastructure in place that can be developed? So this is an incentive that tries to get property owners and developers to revitalize their commercial properties without having to go to new spaces, new open spaces. The neighborhood upgrade that Steve had mentioned, that's another type of incentive. And these are here on the upper part of the table where I've got them. These are the different types of incentive zones: rural residential, conservation, or commercial revitalization, neighborhood upgrade, which is really as Steve had mentioned, there are some parts of the community where some of the older neighborhoods in particular may be lacking some of the services that other neighborhoods enjoy. And as development happens in the area, there is an incentive for a developer to maybe drag along some of that infrastructure or those services to help service those neighborhoods that are in need. Again, it's a community benefit. And then the fourth incentive zone is historic properties. This table shows the involved zoning districts. Again, the rural residential incentive zone is the same as it follows the same boundaries as the rural residential zoning district. Commercial revitalization affects the B1 and B2 zoning districts. The neighborhood upgrade and the historic property incentives and benefits are open to all the different zoning districts in the town. This table shows the different types of incentives that are available within each of those incentive zones and the different types of incentive zones going down the left side of the table, and explains what is available and what might not be available to a developer in terms of incentives. Just up here in these first few lines, you can see where we're talking about the open space incentive option, and that's where we're talking about the conservation subdivision only, and that's only available within the rural residential zoning district. Other types of incentives that might be available in some of those incentive zones could be things like reduced setback requirements, reduced parking requirements, maybe an additional signage allowance, maybe an increase in a height allowance, mixed use where you have maybe a commercial and a residential component. Different types of incentives, again, that are written on the left-hand side of the table. Under state law, if a developer chooses not to do a specific incentive, but still gain some type of value to a project, they can do a payment in lieu of an incentive. That's allowed under state law. Then this part of the table breaks down the different types of community benefits. These are the things that a developer would offer to a community in exchange for some of these incentives. So it could be things like preservation or conservation of open space, agriculture, creation or improvements of public parks, trails, recreation facilities, historic preservation of cultural resources, senior housing for low or moderate income, maybe extension of water, sewer, or public utility improvements into certain areas. Roadway infrastructure might be safety improvements for pedestrians or bicyclists, green infrastructure, landscaping, and even waterfront improvements at public sites, for example, along the Genesee River. So again, this is a nice summary of the various types of incentives and community benefits that would be allowed under incentive zoning within the community. And this is contained within the GEIS as well. So really, just to wrap it up before we provide time for comments or questions, there's still an opportunity for folks to look at the draft EIS. It's available at henrietta.org. Comments can be made either at the public hearing tonight, or it can be submitted after tonight until 5 p.m. on April 25th. And that should be submitted to Chris Martin, Director of Engineering and Planning. And then after the public comment period ends, we will take a look at the comments received. We will respond to those comments and produce a final supplemental GEIS, and that'll be followed. That would be made public, and then that will be followed by the town board statement of finding, which completes seeker. And then once seeker is done, the town board can make a decision based upon everything that it's heard and seen as to whether or not it wants to go ahead and adopt the regulations that are proposed. So we can open it up now to comments or questions.
One of the things I don't see on that slide, Chris's email is cmartin@henrietta.org. So if you want to submit something via email, you can send it to him that way too.
Thanks.
Any questions? I think you gave a really comprehensive review there, Walt, so I don't know how many questions there's going to be, but
Yeah.
anybody have any questions, comments? Anybody online? All right.
Did I put everyone to sleep?
No?
No, I just wanted to say thanks, Walt, for the time you committed and due diligence to this process. I thought it was very well handled also.
Yeah, very detailed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciated.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So unless there's any objection, I will close the public hearing to consider the draft supplemental generic environmental impact statement for incentive zoning and updated solar regulations. Again, public comment is still ongoing. You can reach out to Chris Martin, including his email at cmartin@henrietta.org. Or you can send it to supervisor@henrietta.org and I'll get it to him. Basically, any way you want to get us the feedback, we'll take it. Hearing no objections, public hearing is closed. Thanks again, Walt.
Thank you, Walt.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
You too.
You too.
Can I get my first resolution?
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 8-87, 2021, to authorize bills payable for March 26, 2021 through today, April 14th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution numbered 8-88, 2021, to declare intent to be lead agency for seeker review for Riverton parcels A and B for the purpose of 90 townhomes and 85 single-family homes in a planned unit development zoning district.
Second.
Any discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 8-89, 2021, to call a public hearing for proposed local law to update no parking zones to add parking restrictions to cul-de-sacs.
Second.
Any discussion? So again, as we talked about at the workshop, this is largely to clarify. There's some ambiguity in the code with regards to what is and is not allowed in the cul-de-sacs, so we are going to clarify that. Hearing no comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 8-90, 2021, to call for a public hearing for proposed local law to prohibit the removal of flowers, trees, and plants from town parks.
Second. So again, as discussed, we've seen some removal of plants from our parks, including some wholesale removal. And we want to make it very clear in the code that this is not allowed. And so that when we catch the people doing it, we have caught them a couple times, that we can essentially prosecute them. So one of the things in the code that we talked about is we want to make it clear this is not for, kids picking dandelions or stuff like that, or, this is essentially wholesale destruction. In some of our parks, there's some really gorgeous wildflowers and ferns. And again, people have been essentially harvesting them and then turning around and selling them.
So from our workshop discussions, it was said that some people were pulling up large sections, putting in their truck, and then reselling these things other places in our town, and we want to stop that from happening.
That's correct.
We want to make sure that we're not punishing a child who's picking a random flower that accidentally or something along those lines.
Agreed.
Right.
Anything else? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye?
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. My tablet died, so I'm borrowing Millie's. Fellow board members, I have resolution 8-91, 2021 to reject bids received for the sewer and drainage garage project.
Seconded.
So basically, with the cost of steel and a number of other issues, this project came in, the lowest bid was almost double what we had budgeted. So we had a good meeting with the folks, the low bid respondent, as far as how we can trim some costs. And we've put together a plan to move forward with the idea that we would probably go back out to bid this fall. Hopefully some of the steel prices will have come down by then. The other thing that will allow us to do is we can do a lot of the site work. Our town crews have the ability to do a lot of that site work, but not if it's on a hard and fast schedule, which is typically the case when you're doing, when you have a
Masonry work.
developer coming in. So what this will allow us to do is get a lot of that work done so that the site is ready to go by the fall. So essentially, when our crews have time in between the other projects they're working on, they'll be able to tackle this, and that should save probably $250,000 from the responding price. So,
Very good.
any other questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye?
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 8-92, 2021 to authorize advertisements of bids for the facilities building project.
Second.
So as part of that, what we're going to do is we're going to build it's basically a 40 by 44 structure, 40 by 40 foot, 44 foot structure, 4 bays. This is for the facilities department. Currently, they're using a relic from the past. It's a piece of the original DPW garage, and that's kind of coming down on its own. But what this will allow us to do is build this, get everything into it, and then we can remove the old garage, because that location of the old garage is where the sewer and drainage garage will go. So again, this will allow us to get rid of that, do any remediation with respect to asbestos or other dangerous materials. There's some work that has to be done on there is a sewer that runs near or through there. So essentially, again, we can do a lot of the site work so that when we go back out to bid, there will be no site work. The folks building the building can just come in and get started. So like I said, that should save about $250,000. So that's the goal here. We're doing this as the base bid is essentially the foundation and the masonry. And then there is an add alternate for the wood framing. It's possible our crews could do that wood framing, although that would put a significant burden on them from a schedule standpoint. So if the prices come back in on the wood framing at a reasonable cost, we'll outsource it. If not, we'll do it ourselves if it comes in too high. That's the plan. Any questions?
Thanks to our crews for all the work they do for our town and the money they save us.
Hearing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 8-93, 2021, to hire personnel and make the attached changes.
Second.
So I'd like to offer my congratulations to the individuals who have achieved their necessary training and time on machines in order to be promoted to senior MEO. That there's a couple individuals included on that, so it's great to see folks in our DPW continue to advance their skills and move up the ranks.
I second that.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have Resolution 8-94, 2021, to authorize the tax accessory settlement with JMDH Real Estate of Rochester LLC.
Second.
So big thank you to our acting assessor, Charlene Stephanie, and her assessment office team. They were able to negotiate this tax tertiary settlement with no refunds.
That's
So
great.
it's all moving forward. We won't actually have to refund any past taxes paid, so. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 8-95, 2021, to appoint David Schwingle and Dan Lindsay to the Board of Assessment Review.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have Resolution 8-96, 2021, to authorize the purchase of a new replacement dump truck body.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 8-97, 2021, to authorize the purchase and installation of a new street light pole, wiring and light fixture for the intersection of Long Trail Lane and East Henrietta Road.
Second.
Discussion?
It's needed.
Yep.
I'm glad it's going in. It'll be a lot safer down there in nighttime and early morning.
And one of the things we're going to be doing going forward is as these new roads come in, we're going to make sure that it's on the plans that the developer has to put this in the future.
Very smart.
Unfortunately, this one didn't have that requirement, but we're making sure of that in the future. Any other discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have Resolution 8-98, 2021, to designate 6400 West Henrietta Road as a historic site.
Second.
Any discussion?
I appreciate the work that the Historic Site has done in bringing this information forward to the board and keeping an eye on recruiting new homes to be designated as historic locations.
Agreed. And again, obviously, thank you to the homeowner who is willing to do this. You know, one of the things we're looking at is some additional code changes down the road in addition to the incentive zoning, because I want there to be a real benefit to people who do designate their homes historic. They're preserving a part of our history, and it'd be nice if they were able to receive some benefit from doing that. So we're looking at various code changes. One of the ones we implemented a month or two ago was an increased buffering around historic properties. So if new development comes in, they have to stay, essentially they can't have any building or parking lot within, I think it's 150 feet of the historic property. So, you know, we're looking to do what we can to preserve our history and again, essentially pay back the people who are willing to take on the burden of a historic property. Any other comments, discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have Resolution 8-99, 2021, to approve the audited 2020 financial statements and other annual reports.
Second.
So I'd like to thank Linda Salpini, Director of
Yes.
Finance, and her team on the excellent work that they do and, you know, get the continued high grades from our auditors. It's, you know, she and her team implemented a bunch of additional standards when she came into office, and, you know, it shows. They've done a great job, not just from an audit standpoint and checks and balances standpoint, but also building financial rigor, especially in the budgeting process. So as a result of that, you know, we've been able to find cost savings, and so we can actually offer more services while still keeping the taxes flat, which obviously is a huge goal of ours. So again, thanks to her and her team and all the work that they do to make that happen.
I'd like to also say thanks to Linda and her team. It is an outstanding job they do, and even when someone has questions about the budget, she makes herself available to answer them and explain those things in layman terms, because a lot of people don't understand all the numbers, so it's very good to have that rapport also.
Any other comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 8-100, 2021, to award the 2021 cul-de-sacs and pump station mowing contract to Extreme Lawn Care and Landscaping.
Second. So the award, you know, we're authorizing the award. They're the ones who won the bid. They have a few things that still have to get done before they actually and obviously be under contract. So they have a few things they still need to provide the town, but assuming that they're able to provide that, then they will be our contractor for mowing the cul-de-sacs and pump stations. So this was a late ad because the bid came in, and unfortunately we didn't realize, I didn't notice that it wasn't on the workshop agenda. So I asked them to send it out as a separate thing so you guys could quickly review it. But again, it was the results of the bid we had called at the previous meeting. So anything else? Any other comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. That concludes our resolutions. Do we have any additional discussions, items from either the board or the public? Go ahead and come on up, just state your name and what you'd like to talk about.
Hi,
I see all of your eyes starting to glaze over, so I'll try and make everything very quick. I appreciate you taking the time to let me speak with you today. My name is Jennifer Caesar. I'm a member of the Color Henrietta Green organization. I've been a resident of Henrietta for just about all of my 38 years. Both my husband and I are RH alumni, and our children currently attend RH schools. And we're very much invested in this community, especially where it concerns environmental impacts that may bring challenges to the future of our families. My neighbor, Pat Wardinger, gave an overview of our group to you all last March on the 8th for the workshop. And since that time, we've held our virtual kickoff event on March 18th, sponsored by the Henrietta Public Library and the Climate Solutions Accelerator team, where we engaged with over a dozen community members on environmental concerns. Most notable in attendance was Mike Yudelson, former Henrietta Town Supervisor and now the County Legislator for the 13th District. He expressed great enthusiasm in seeing more green initiatives promoted in Henrietta, as well as a similar drive in Monroe County as a whole. Color Henrietta Green's next community event will be a tree giveaway at Tinker Park on Saturday, May 8th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We've purchased about 50 seedlings of various native species from the New York State DEC annual spring seedling sale to give away to Henrietta residents. Flyers will be posted soon, and more information can be found on our group's Facebook page. But aside from updating you on our group happenings, my main goal tonight is to give a call to action. In order to protect and ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the town of Henrietta and its residents, Color Henrietta Green and its members would like to formally request to the Henrietta Town Board the establishment of a sustainability committee, advisory board, task force, whichever title is deemed appropriate. This committee will promote and advocate for policies supporting sustainability over a wide range of subjects, including but not limited to environmental assessment, waste reduction and recycling, energy conservation, natural resource conservation, and educating residents on sustainable practices. We hope that this committee can assist the town in applying to become a DEC climate smart community, as well as a NYSERDA clean energy community, which will open opportunities for the town to apply for grants for green initiatives. That being said, time is a factor, as application for these grants must be submitted by specified due dates. For example, applications for all the DEC climate smart communities grants for the year of 2019 were due in July of 2019. There are descriptions in your packets of grants that were approved for the Finger Lakes region from the 2016 and 2019 years, to give you an example of some of the other initiatives that local municipalities are doing. There isn't any data yet from the year of 2020, as understandably, the program was probably put on hold. But in the year of 2019, DEC approved over $11 million in grants for communities enrolled in this program. The NYSERDA Clean Energy Community has both specific dates and rolling funding opportunities, but are limited to a set number of grants allocated. So the funding for the year, once it's gone, it's gone. Luckily, both of these programs have a lot of overlap and can be applied simultaneously. But much of the work that needs to be done for these initiatives requires some form of official municipal task force, a delegated town coordinator, and/or a town liaison to a state-provided coordinator. These tasks will require the legwork of many people, and Henrietta already has a very large pool of qualified residents that would gladly volunteer to serve for this, like Color Henrietta Green member Elizabeth Pixley, who is a professor emeritus in biology and environmental science at Monroe Community College, and has been the recipient of the town of Henrietta's Antoinette Brown Blackwell Award for Women in Leadership. Also, Pat, who's with me here tonight, she's a retired professor in biology and a member of just about every conservation group in the county. And just residents like myself who know that sustainable practices are best practices for the health and welfare of our community. Though the past year has provided significant obstacles and changes in the priorities for all of us, as we turn a new corner, now seems like the best time to roll with those changes and implement the kinds of initiatives that will make our community more resilient to future challenges. A general outline of possible duties of a sustainability committee, as well as a sample timeline for its implementation, can be found in the packet for you to review at your leisure. I'm not going to read everything word for word. We hope that the board will find this application favorable and will take decisive action to establish this request in the very near future. Thank you for your time and consideration. And if you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Can you do me a favor and email this to me at supervisor@henrietta.org so I can give it to our town clerks to add to the minutes?
Sure thing.
Thanks, Jennifer. That's good information.
Thank you.
Very nice, thank you.
So, you know, as you are aware, we've been looking at doing some stuff, as you mentioned, this past year is kind of threw a monkey wrench into that. One of the things we're looking at is the replacement of all of our street lights with LEDs. So we basically have to go out to bid. We've got a couple companies that are looking to do that. My deputy town supervisor, Craig Eckert, has been leading that effort. This past month, we've been swamped with, we were averaging about a dozen special permit or public hearings per meeting. So it's kind of been on hold a little bit, but as those are starting to slow down, so we should be able to pick this back up and get moving with it. We have a couple other initiatives. We have gone after some NYSERDA grants to put in car charging stations. We've done some green infrastructure. We'll be looking at some additional stuff. One of the things we are, as I mentioned, we have the new 5 megawatt solar array in town. We intend to purchase our power from renewable sources. We are also working with the, there's a, I'm trying to remember what it's called.
I can't remember either.
Community choice aggregation. So community choice aggregation is the idea. When they created the ESCOs, which is the energy supply companies, essentially, if you don't specify, you get the default. And that default gets selected by the utility company. What community choice aggregation allows is essentially for us to aggregate anybody who hasn't specified to increase our buying power. And, one of the things that you can do with that is you can get a particular percentage of renewable sources and still have it be cheaper than traditional energy supply. And so I know a couple of our neighboring communities have done that. I've reached out to their supervisors to get guidance from them. So we're going to take a look at doing that. For anybody who says, well, what if I don't want your choice? Anybody who specifically chooses their own ESCO gets that ESCO. This is just for people who haven't made a choice. It would be the town would pick it instead of RG&E or National Grid, depending on who your supplier is. So basically that's what happens. If you don't pick it, RG&E does. And so those are some of the initiatives we're looking at. Again, these kind of got derailed last year. One of the things that a lot of them do take are some dedicated and energetic people, and I'm glad that we have the Color Henrietta Green Group that can provide that. Last year we went after I think it was Department of Agriculture contract or grant to try to do compost, including looking at a couple different, whether it's vermiculture or, again, I'm sorry, I'm getting groggy with my COVID shot, but we're looking at a couple different solutions to potentially have a community compost area. One of the things that was interesting with it is it would turn around the composting very quickly and create really good, I'll call it tree food. And so then one of the things we were looking at is reaching out to RIT, who's got a bunch of land on the south side of their campus that's currently underutilized, to see would they be willing with their Institute of Sustainability, would they be willing to essentially create a tree farm there? Because getting saplings is actually fairly easy. The problem is if you put those in the park, they're not going to survive. So can I grow them to the point where they're of sufficient caliber that if I then transplant them to the park, they will survive? So, those are some of the things we're taking a look at because, as everyone's aware, the emerald ash borer wreaked havoc on our parks as well as a lot of the public right-of-ways and private property. So
Yep.
To be able to replenish some of that tree canopy. And the other thing we're looking at is that we would do it with some biodiversity, because that's one of the problems, you know. So like where I grew up, everything was elm trees. And when Dutch elm disease came through, neighborhoods were wiped out. And so this idea of always planting a single type of tree is, you know, not a healthy situation. One of the other initiatives we took a while back was a tree bank. We've had some people start to put trees into the tree bank. And again, the idea of that is there is a requirement for developers to have so many trees per acre. Sometimes the development doesn't allow them to fit them all. And I'll use Kitty Van Bortel as an example. At the back, so obviously the front of the property, they don't want a bunch of trees across the front because they're trying to sell cars, right? Along the sides, they're kind of squeezed in because we had to tie them into the Channel 13 driveway. And then across the back, we had asked them to connect their sewer to the residents who were behind them who had no sewer. Well, the problem is you can't put trees over those sewer lines. So there really wasn't a place to put all those trees. And in the past, they would have just said, okay, you don't have to put them all in. What we're doing now is if you have to put in 30 trees and you can only put in 20, then you put 10 trees in the tree bank. And we use that, either those trees or that money to plant trees at the town parks, or again, any public land. So it could be right-of-ways, it could be green belts, anything like that. So those are some of the initiatives we've got going.
Just out of curiosity, I think it's been a while since we've set up a volunteer advisory board. What exactly do we need to do as a board to create a volunteer advisory board related to this issue?
Don?
So this is the first I've been asked to look at this.
Right.
10 minutes ago.
Yeah, so my point is if you can't give us a full answer, that's fine, but my point is.
Yeah, that being said,
Steer us in the right direction.
no, I'm just saying, that being said, so I haven't given it a lot of thought, but that being said, there are lots of boards there are lots of towns with advisory boards in place. This will be an advisory board focused on this particular topic. So you're going to have a local law setting it up with things like number of board members, terms, duties, and so on. We're going through this process right now with the ethics board, for example.
Right.
So it's similar to that. The ethics board is a statutorily core function of the town as opposed to something like this, which obviously could still provide value.
Well, we just did this with the Waterfront Advisory Committee. Now, that one was done through the LWRP, so that had a process defined, and it's not done through the state. But
so basically, it's defining the board itself, defining how many people are on it, how long the terms are, who they're appointed by, how it works, the process, and then the duties of the board. That's basically it in a nutshell.
Do we have to have a public hearing or anything on that, or just?
Do you have some sample?
We do have one that we could send you. Parenton recently had, actually, I believe Peter Collin might have sent all of you guys a copy of the Parenton, how they did theirs into law just this past month.
Yeah, that'd be great. Having a sample local law helps speed the thing across. And we might change things mildly to match Henrietta, but it certainly helps to have.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly.
Brighton also has some type of board as well. A lot of I think Pittsford as well. So a lot of the towns are starting to put these committees together.
Yeah, so you probably would end up codifying it, in which case you would do a local law with a public hearing, the kind of thing that we are used to doing these days. Yeah.
Okay, great. Anything else? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Yep,
Thank you.
Committee and miscellaneous reports. Well, actually, before I go anybody else from the public? Or from the board, discussion items? Okay. Actually, I will just mention in the one discussion item, because of the timing of the offer we did vote on a resolution at the workshop on Monday to present a purchase offer for the Good Shepherd Church and Burger Farmhouse. So the school board had their meeting last night, and I believe they authorized the superintendent to act on it.
To continue
Great.
to negotiate.
Okay. So I think the problem is I think the negotiation's done. The problem is it wasn't done before their cutoff for their board. But Don has done a lot of work with the school board attorney to get all the terms done. So we should be all set.
Okay.
They just need more time, basically.
That's what I guess it sounds like.
Yeah, they said that they wanted to be able to talk about it more in detail at their board meeting.
Okay. Committee or miscellaneous reports?
So the library board met last evening, and the library board is a very diverse board, and we had a very intense conversation on how we had a discussion. I'm just going to read this. I asked Adrian to write this so that it would be proper. The library board had a discussion about how to address racism in the library's collection and ensure that the library collection serves all the different types of people who live in Henrietta. When selecting and removing items from the library, the librarians consult reviews, reports from book vendors about popular titles, journals, and newsletters, bestseller lists, and books that focus on timely topics. Librarians pay attention to what's being promoted heavily in the media, as well as books that have been picked up for production by film and television. They seek out titles that fill in gaps in our collections with the focus on voices that have been traditionally marginalized and underrepresented in mainstream publishing. Their goal is always to provide accurate and timely information, but to also ensure that people can find stories and information by and about people like themselves, as well as by and about people unlike themselves. So we really got into this discussion because there has been books that have been in the media that are being pulled out of libraries and pulled for different reasons that they should be. But we really wanted to talk about what our library was doing. And I'm just so impressed with our librarians and what they're doing and how they're trying to encompass the community. And the discussion was just really amazing. It was just really great. And one of the questions that I had asked was, are you told what to buy? Do you have the ability to buy what you want to do? And so this is really why we came up with kind of something like this. So everyone understands that they do understand the need for diversity. They do look at that and they're making it a priority.
Great. Thank you.
Very good.
Other reports?
Well, there's a lot that's going on with the school district. I'm sure that every parent in the district has certainly seen the flurries of emails and information. At the school board last night, they did decide to bring back K through 6 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. At this time, 7 through 12 is not able to come back due to infection rates in that age group in the community. So they are going to make the decision looking at the data week by week. So I'm sure that they've had their hands full. They are also in the process of finalizing their budget. So they had some discussion last night regarding some new budget information. They are having a major forum tonight, which is probably going to be done by the time that we're finished here. But hopefully will be recorded for us to view, where they'll be answering questions. The budget vote and school board vote will be coming up on May 18th. They will also be having a Meet the Candidates night next Thursday. So candidates that are running for school board, the community will be able to meet and greet. I guess one other thing that I would like to make note of is that the school district has been providing free lunches for all children in the community. So individuals who are participating in the Remote Learning Academy Please check the school district. You are eligible to pick up lunches for your children, and I strongly encourage you to take advantage of that. And it's a service that's provided for them, and we want to make sure that everyone in our community has plenty to eat.
Thank you.
No.
Was that meeting for the candidates virtual also?
I believe it's
Yeah, it was
virtual.
virtual.
I didn't make note of that, but.
Yeah, it was virtual.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Right.
From the Parks and Recreation Department, they're accepting applications for some different positions, and the first is from the Rec Department, summer camp counselors and youth volunteers. You can get your application on the town website or pick them up at the Recreation Center. Must be available to work Monday through Friday, July 6th to August 13th, and the deadline to apply is the 30th of April. The Senior Center has a part-time position. Qualified applicants must have a clean driver's license, kitchen experience, and enjoy the company of senior citizens. You can call the Rec Center or Senior Center at 334-4030 for more information. And then the Recreation Center has an open position for a recreation assistant. Must be available to work evening and weekends. You can call the Rec Center at 359-7055 for more information. And then some events coming up. We have Scott's Donor Drive is scheduled for Saturday, May 1st at the Rec Center from 9 to 2. This is an organ donation sign-up drive, as well as a Red Cross blood drive. To register, you can go to redcrossblood.org. Recreation Department is organizing a clean sweep. Volunteers and community groups will be picking up litter and sprucing up area to improve the landscape at town parks and roadsides. To get involved with the project, you can call Pam Grudman at 359-7055. That's 359-7055. We also this year have the Memorial Day Parade in a reverse event. And that's going to be on Sunday, May 23rd at Veterans Memorial Park. Begins at 2 p.m. This is a drive-through event for residents only. And pre-registration is required. Registration opens May 3rd. Any groups, especially military, that may be interested in part can call Craig Ross at the Recreation Center at 359-7057. And then finally, well, I'm not sure how many years it's been going on, but the RH Kicking Hunger 5K is scheduled for Saturday, June 5th. And this is it's in person or virtual on the weekend of June 4th to June 6th. All proceeds go to Kicking Hungry 5K. And you can call the Rec Center to get the website to register.
Great. So the town newsletter is at the printers right now. I'm hoping it goes out this weekend, so keep an eye out for it. Some of those major events are mentioned in there. Like I said, hopefully that should be out this weekend. Anyone else?
My boards are pretty low key right now. After this, I'll have something to say next time.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing no objections, meeting adjourned.